Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host amazing guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and martech. I'm Chris Wood, analyst media content at eMarketer. Today, our guests will explore how brands are aligning metrics with customer needs, rebuilding trust through deeper listening, and using AI analytics to boost marketing performance. Joining me from New York are Manny Neto, Vice President, Global Analytics and Data Science at Capri Holdings Limited. Hi, Manny.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me. How are you doing today?
Great. I'm doing wonderful, and I'm glad that you had some time today. Marta Frattini, Director of Industry Strategy and Marketing Retail at Adobe's Digital Strategy Group, is also here today. Hi, Marta.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Oh, wonderful. Audience, we'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so drop it in the chat. You can also use the chat to send in any questions throughout today's session. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the live Q&A in the second part of the show. But first, Marta and Manny have great content planned for you today. So with that, Marta, over to you.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Manny, for joining me today for a conversation I am very excited about. So 2025 has been quite the year of change for retail, right? Between like tariffs, AI, and everything that is happening out there. What is one thing that you will take with you into 2026?
Thanks, Marta, for having me. Yes, it's been a big year of recalibration for retail, for the industry, for us. And between shifting dynamics, customer expectations changing, and also AI dominating the world, there's been a lot of changes we're essentially suffering from. So the one word and things I want to take with me to 2026 is agility. I think the ability to adapt fast, to test fast, and retain that customer-centric approach would be really key for us to navigate the continuous approach of AI, the tariffs that every day may change still, as well as the supply chains that keep shifting pretty much every other hour. So the companies, the brands who are learning quickly, adapting quickly, and retaining that chameleon kind of approach will succeed quite well. Whilst having a solid data foundation, so that allows us to create that intimacy with the consumer, because the more the AI takes over, the more they move really fast. We don't want to lose the proximity, the intimacy of the consumer, because that will be key to win. So more consumers will be craving personalization. So agility, personalization, intimacy of the consumers are words that we're definitely going to be exploring the next year.
Thank you. And yes, obviously AI is the word of the year, right? I agree with that. I think one thing we continue to see in the retail industry is the top priorities in terms of digital transformation are number one, the customer experience. Number two is how do I unlock more efficiencies? And ultimately, the two converging towards driving profitable growth, right? And I think that is not new. As an industry in retail, we have been going at that for a while. But the real change this year to me was AI and the AI acceleration and what it is unlocking on both ends of that equation, right? Better experiences, better efficiencies, more automation. It's also exciting to start to see some of that for me move from back office to front office. I feel like when we started on this journey, all of us were looking a lot at efficiencies and doing things better. And now the brave ones are actually putting it out there to power customer experiences. So I think you touched on that data foundation, and I feel that is really the game changer, right? As we accelerate this journey, because you need to be ready to power those experiences right and timely and correctly.
And I'm adding the brave one to my media review. So yes.
Yes, exactly. The other thing I think I'm seeing change, though, that I think is very interesting is the how operating models are changing. So at Adobe, we did a research a few months ago with about 500 retail executives globally. And we touched on a lot of topics around the customer experience. And I think this concept of customer centricity. And one of the things that is coming out clearly for me is how retail as an industry has historically been anchored and organized by channels or by products, right? And more of the leading companies are moving towards more of a customer segment or even customer journey-centric organization. And certainly more and more of them are recognizing the importance of it as the ideal model. So to me, I'm curious to see as AI continues to accelerate and touch all the different parts of the organization and the customer experience, how is this going to continue to impact this shift in how teams organize themselves, work together, measure, and really define success? So this is definitely something I'm looking forward for 2026. The other thing that I wanted to touch on you on is we are also seeing how the role of marketing continues to evolve, right? In that same research, we heard from over 90% of retail executives that they have an increased focus on efficiency. They have to do more with less. They own more of the customer experience, so the scope is expanding. But I think what is also very interesting, and maybe the more interesting thing for this conversation is the focus on direct revenue impact, right? They own the customer experience, they own the growth. They are expected to directly impact revenue, and their investments and their performance is measured based on that revenue impact. So how does that change the role of analytics leadership and what analytics team focus on?
I can't start answering this question without giving a major shout out to my marketing team. Absolute legends. I am super thankful to have them as partners. But I do think the role of marketing itself is fundamentally evolving. It's changing. It's demanding more, to your point. And analytics and marketing are best friends, right? We're big partners of marketing. So we're no longer just shaping perception, we're shaping performance. And for us as analytics leaders, that comes with our role evolving from just reporting on what happened and starting to become co-pilots of the future in partnership with marketing. So I like to say we're moving from measurement only to decision acceleration whilst providing measurement. So that means is that traditional teams are often focused on retrospective reporting, what happened, how it performed, and why. Whereas the evolution is how do we build systems that are going to help us act in real time, understand what's going on in the now and then optimize our journeys to ensure that the consumers are essentially engaging with us in every single touch point. And AI is allowing us to anticipate some of that, create some anticipation of trends, create some real-time engagement, recommend actions in real time, and honestly, even automate some of the optimizations that would have taken much longer for us to do so. So AI is functioning as the amplification of human insight. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying it's replacing strategies, replacing the roles of any human. It's just augmenting them when utilized correctly. So it's helping us scale testing much faster, personalization much faster, creating dynamic opportunities to personalize content and experiences to our customers, and also greater precisions for essentially all the models that are going to be looking to the future and how to optimize better. Critically, it's also helping our analytical teams spend less time putting data together and interpreting that information to, again, be the co-pilots of how we're leveraging strategy to drive a decision. So there's a word that I really like. It's a sentence that says, analytics leadership is evolving to essentially enable clarity at speed. So we've always been able to provide clarity, and now we're able to empower that to be much faster, much quicker. And the ones who can connect the creativity, the data, the technology, and business impact will definitely help define what the playbook for modern market looks like in 2026 and definitely beyond.
I love that. And I love that idea of like an enabler and that augmentation and help, right? Because I've been in retail for a long time. And prior to joining Adobe, I was in a retailer, and I can absolutely empathize with that pain of like Monday business review, where you're expected in like a few hours to pull together the data and have a perspective on the data, right? And I think that removing the hurdle of pulling it together and really being able to focus on like quickly looking at different hypotheses and dynamics is really what will make analytics teams more powerful to be able to actually do what I feel everyone wants to focus on. That's great. Okay, so the other thing is I see a lot of change in how customers are finding brands today, right? So at Adobe, we are in the very lucky position of being able to aggregate anonymous data from all of the companies out there that leverage Adobe Analytics. And through that, look at market trends, right? And one of the things that really stands out is this increase in generative AI-driven traffic. we saw over 4,000% growth year over year in people that are coming to retail websites from ChatGPT, Perplexity, and the likes. And we see consumers using it for a little bit of everything, right? From initial research and product recommendations, like what are the best running shoes for a beginner, or comparing different brands and products, or looking for deals, which I can only expect will be very relevant during like Black Friday and holiday, or even gift ideas. Like I might look for a gift for my mom for sure. So it's a very new way of finding brands and finding products. How do you see, from your perspective, the customer acquisition landscape evolving?
I think it's evolving as we speak, right? Like I'm sure something new will come as we are in this webinar. So what AI is doing is it's reshaping how consumers, how customers, how prospects are discovering brands. And that shift's happening, I think, faster than any of us anticipated, any of us expected. So the GPTs of the world, we're moving from search intent to AI intent. So customers are asking questions, they're seeking recommendations, they're discovering and expecting trusted context-aware based answers coming from the GPTs. So what it does for us, it redefines what the acquisition playbook looks like entirely. So it's no longer enough to just optimize for keywords or paid placements. I want to clarify, I'm not saying you should not do that. I'm saying in addition to that, you should also consider how to optimize for meaning. And particularly a strong brand narrative, a clear sense of purpose, they will become critical because the systems will surface that information, the information that's most credible, the information that's most consistent, the information that's contextually relevant. So if you're not playing in those environments, you're going to be missing, you're going to become invisible. So if your brand doesn't have a well-defined identity and a story that's different, that you can relate to, that's engaging, you do risk becoming visible as this new discovery layer comes to life, right? So for Gen Z, for example, the younger generations in particular, we're seeing a lot of dynamics where their purchase decisions are driven less by the traditional notions of what luxury looks like and more by what experience they're getting from it. How does it align to my goals, to my beliefs, to who I am? And also how authentic that message that we're sending to that generations are looking like, how they interpret that. So we want the brands want to stand for something that's going to show up consistently through content, through community, to commerce. And from analytics perspective, it does create a complexity measurement layer. So we're no longer able to essentially check channel by channel by channel because it has blurred the lines between paid, the earned, the organic, you name it. Because if they're using one tool like the GPTs to discover your brand, to understand your brand, to get context from your brand, to align and engage with your brand, and then potentially convert, because we do see an increase on people converting directly to the GPTs, we have to be sharper about incrementality. We have to be sharper about what drives actually true lift, and also what is correlating with the conversion. Again, participate in those conversations, create their brand authenticity, and story narrative as well. So in short, AI has rewritten, and as we speak, is rewriting yet again, and tomorrow yet again, the rules of acquisition. So the brands that are blending storytelling with science, a little bit of love, a little bit of science, I think with a compelling brand purpose, supported by some very strong data foundation, data clarity, will definitely be getting some very strong competitive advantage over there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious to even see what this conversation will look like 6 months from now, right? Because I feel like we're all learning so much. Yeah, the world is changing. But I agree. I think you said something really important. We work with a lot of brands right now on generative engine optimization, right? And what is common and what is different from SEO. And I think one of the things that is really critical is that third-party narrative. How do you influence how others talk about your brands and where others talk about your brands? Because to your point, all of these AI platforms really rely on like the Reddits and the social media and the expert guides of the world. So that like in a world that I think is anchored, as we said, more and more in measurement ROI efficiency, it is really important to be able to protect those brand investments. And I think you said it very well, right? You need to rethink how you're measuring, because otherwise your CFO is not going to approve that big brand awareness top of funnel investment. So we are also seeing a lot movement towards, first of all, being able to even identify the traffic that comes from these sources. So like in analytics or Adobe Customer Journey Analytics or Optimizer, we have now built-in source tracking for some of these, right? So that companies can actually understand where people are coming from. But I think more importantly is how do you measure impact is the mixed modeling of the world. It is the incrementality framework you refer to, and really making sure to connect the dots between things that are not measured on ROI, but have a huge impact to make sure that you can get the yes from the CFO. Okay, so we talked about how customers find brands, and we talked about customer centricity in the beginning, right? I think we can all agree that retail customers are increasingly expecting seamless experiences across physical stores, online platforms, mobile apps, third-party channels, etc. What do you see as the biggest challenge in providing data that actually supports this true omni-channel engagement?
They are 100% thinking that way. So I think customers today, they're no longer thinking in channels, right? I think they think in moments. So they see one brand, they see one product, they correlate to it, they want it, and they start expecting one seamless engagement and experience, regardless of channel, regardless if it's online, if it's offline, if it's the store and whatnot. So that's what true omni-channel engagement looks like, is having that carry through of a very seamless, painless experience throughout, echoing the same brand approach, the same sentiment, the same product approach that you will. So that also makes it very powerful while it's complex. So the biggest challenge is not only the technology to support that. I think we're making some significant movements there. AI is coming, helping us quite dramatically that too. But it's the data integration. So a lot of the companies still have fragmentation of information. So you have data from commerce sitting in one location, CRM sitting in the other, media in another, in-store data sitting in another. So how do you combine all of that fragmentation to essentially connect those behaviors so that we can respond to the consumer in a unified, cohesive way? So how do we understand context? How do we deliver the continuity that customers are expecting, rightfully so? So AI is essentially transforming the possibility here. It's giving us that real-time understanding. It's giving us the real-time context, the real-time intent. So it's up to us to then take that information and turn all of that into action. So it's changing the paradigm of engagement, really. It's designing experience channel by channel, but also bringing all those channels together to create one cohesive, one unified experience. So we're creating journeys that learn on the go, right now, at the moment, and then for your next click, for your next move, for your next engagement, utilize what you just learned a second ago to optimize. So every interaction, every engagement should be, and hopefully will be feeding intelligence back into this journey system so that the next touch point is smarter and more relevant. So I like to say that data is gold, right? And in a universe where we control that gold even more with the consent cookies and whatnot, if one is giving you that information, let's leverage it. Let's treat it as a treasure that it really is. And then ultimately, AI is really helping us close that gap between data and experience and moment. So it's giving us the ability to bring empathy, to bring consistency, and hopefully consumers can see that to the navigations with our domains.
I love that parallel and connection you make between relevance and empathy, right? Because at the end of the day, that's like how I feel heard. I feel like you're actually responding to what I need. And I agree with you. I think like we absolutely see the increasing importance of the real-time element, right? Anticipating intent, reacting with speed, consistency, the relevance we were talking about. I personally think the definition itself of personalization is changing. I think that a few years ago, it used to be very much of a marketing thing. It has since moved into this customer experience realm, right? I think as customers hop from desktop to mobile to store to social, personalization is the ability to recognize them, to make that experience a continuum, to understand what they're looking for, to not have them restart from zero every time. And the other thing is something we are hearing a lot around holiday as well, right? And with holiday coming up, that real-time element and that intent element, because even with your most loyal customers who you know so well, they might be coming to your website and actually shopping for someone else, for a gift. And so it's like, how do you actually, to your point, understand, tweak, react in real time to the signals you're getting so that that experience can actually be relevant to them? Absolutely, absolutely aligned. And that data layer that powers all that, right? Not easy to pull it all together, to your point. You have data in all the different places. But I can certainly see with AI accelerating some of the capabilities, how that becomes even more critical, right? I think that the leaders, the ones that have it in place, will accelerate faster. Like that gap will actually broaden over time. So definitely something that a lot of the companies we work with are prioritizing, of setting that right foundation to feed all of that AI power. I wanted to next talk a little bit about how Adobe solves for some of these, right? And because we talked about AI analytics, just maybe share a quick overview of our solutions and some of the most interesting innovations we see coming from an AI power perspective to the analytics space. So first of all, our vision for data insights and analytics is really the intelligence that shapes the entire customer experience, right? So our analytics solution cohesively power from acquisition of new customers to engaging, converting, and then retaining over time. So if we start with acquisition, for example, we have solutions like Adobe Mix Modeler that allows you to really measure your marketing investment allocation and optimize that over time. Content analytics that allows you to measure what resonates with the customers and what messaging resonates there. Then we go into the engagement and conversion area, which we have the very famous Adobe Analytics platform that delivers really, really rich insights across all the digital channels. But I think what is even more interesting today is the concept of customer journey analytics, is how do you not only look at one interaction, but how do you look at how is the customer and the customer lifetime value shaping up from touch point to touch point, from action to action. And then we do have elements that also help our B2B customers really looking into buying behaviors and pipeline acceleration. But I think across all of these life cycle, right, is really having these connected experience cloud applications with AI infused throughout. So I wanted to touch on some of my favorite AI innovation, I guess. You talked about mixed modeling before and the importance of ROI and incrementality. This is an example where, as I have seen Adobe Mix Modeler come to market and being adopted, I really see the power of an AI-first tool, right? It's not just about looking back. It's also about being able to quickly react and optimize. So if you all of a sudden have an extra 10% budget increase that your CFO said yes to, you can use tools like these to actually quickly decide to which tactics, which channels allocate, and do scenario planning across different types of investments, right? So we are really seeing this as something really powerful to be able to react in the moment, in peak, in campaign, rather than just in hindsight. The second thing that I have been particularly excited about this year, that I think is a bit of like the new frontier for analytics and marketing, is content analytics. I think as marketers, we are all used to measuring campaigns and campaign performance and audiences. But this is really new. This allows to connect marketers and creative around more of like the asset performance, right? So you can leverage AI to add attributes to a picture, an image, a message, and start to really understand that scale and in aggregate things like, is a in-context image featuring performing better than like a laydown? Is a group product shot performing better than a single shot? Are certain colors or moods performing differently? And I think this isn't just like optimizing campaigns, right? It's the feedback loop you can create back to your creative teams to inform what do they create and where does that creative goes. And then last but not least, because everyone is talking about agentic, we do have agentic capabilities into our tools and data insights agent, right? And I think this is maybe, as someone who has worked in analytics for a long time, one of the things I am the most excited about in terms of unlocks, because it is the ability to leverage AI intelligence to discover insights faster, right? To do it in a responsible, on-brand way, to really be on top of your business, and how you can use natural language to get started in data exploration, data visualization, and really simplifying how you do that insight discovery so that you can quickly look at many different things and really focus on the aspects that are more tied to the decision making. So these are just like, I think there's a lot coming to the market in general. These are like three of my favorites, or three that I see people react to the most. But I am curious about, Mane, what are you most excited in terms of AI unlocks?
All of the above and more. I think there are two. The evolution of media mix modeling. We started that journey with you guys, and I'm very thankful for, which is really exciting. So thank you for bringing that to market. Excited to see what else you guys are bringing. But the evolution of how marketing is being measured, and with the loss and gains of signals, right, is something that's going to be super critical for us. So how marketers are adapting analytics in partnership, adapting to the ever-changing dynamics of how channels are being blurred a little bit, and how we're going to get those signals to drive impact. I'm super excited about. And I think the second one is the proximity that we can start using. So using e-commerce and optimizations to know what consumers are doing at the moment and optimize their very next click is absolutely magical. So it means we're listening. It means we're bringing that connection to the consumer. And back to my points, if they're giving us their data, right, they're opting into being tracked. Let's make the best out of it. And let's make sure that their journey is optimized. It's evolved personalization, as you described. And most importantly, it's key for them to essentially go to the funnel and convert. So very excited. Thank you for the question. I'm going to pass back to Chris to open up for the audience for further questions, if any.
Wonderful. Thanks, Manny. And Marta, thank you so much. Great discussion. And thank you for sharing your perspectives. I have to say, I thought that the creative tool for designers was very interesting, because it must be empowering for the creative team to have all those insights visualized right there in front of you when you're making an image. We've got quite a few questions from today's audience, so let's see what we received. But if you do also, for anybody who's still watching, want to add a question, drop it in. The first one's for Marta. Marta, you mentioned the incrementality framework. How would a retailer go about implementing it?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's a fundamental change to how many retailers measure. I think what I've seen with a lot of our customers, and even when I was in that role myself, is that the traditional measurement is typically focused, we said it before, like a lot of it is channel, right? So like if you're a email marketer, you're measuring opens and clicks and engagement and revenues per email. And if you work on paid media, you're measuring ROAS. And part of that is like everyone focuses on the best customer and the most performing campaigns, because that's what's gonna like drive everyone's metrics up in that silo. When you start looking at what is actually making a difference, not just because my best customer is the most engaged, but maybe they would have shopped in any case, right? And I just wasted my dollar. So I think one thing Manny also touched on, when you look at overall investments, is certainly moving from last click or even multi-touch attribution more into the realm of mixed modeling and unified measurement, where you're actually looking at the correlation between your investment and all of the other relevant metrics and movements to what happens to the revenue and the bottom line. When you look at it on a more granular level, like campaigns or initiatives, I think shifting from channel metrics to customer impact is what really makes a difference, right? So we see companies that are adding this concept of customer lifetime value a lot more actively into their measurement, really doing a lot of their initiatives on a holdout control base, right? Where you're actually testing what happens over a period of time. So tools like customer journey analytics or others that allow you to not just look at the conversion of that one campaign, but what happens over a period of 30 days, of 60 days, of 90 days to that customer that was exposed to the experience versus someone who wasn't. And this is a fundamental shift. And I think I strongly believe it is the right way to do business. But if you don't change your measurement, people do what they're measured against. So if you continue to only measure your paid media team on ROAS, they will continue to go after bottom of the funnel conversion tactics. So there really needs to be a strategic shift in how the organization measures and performs.
It really makes sense. The second question is also for Marta. Everyone's talking about agentic AI, but are organizations actually putting it into practice from what you've been seeing?
Yeah, also great question. It's certainly the buzzword of the year, right? I think adoption is actually more advanced than I would have thought. Because someone asked me one day, like, who do you think will be the first company launching an agentic solution? And it's actually already here. Like, we see about, I would say, 5 to 10% of companies that have agentic AI pilots implemented today, particularly like marketing. We see about 30% of companies that plan to have something live by next year. So it's a pretty big chunk. I think in terms of use cases, one that is very obvious is chats, right? Support, product discovery, conversational commerce. I think that has existed for a while as in terms of like the interface is there. You can use chat on an e-com site. But I think what the agentic layer is changing there is more awareness, more context, right? It's not just the chat that you try to interact with, but never gets what you're trying to say. We are seeing really an evolution in the quality, the awareness of like, what are your preferences and like, what is your intent and what are you actually looking for? Second is a lot in the content space. So we see AI and agents used a lot for tagging of content, content versioning of assets that exist for multiple channels. And I think the frontier, though, like what is coming up and where the real interest is in the data space, right? So when we talk to retailers about what do you want from AI, at the end of the day is that better customer experience. And so a lot of them are now exploring agentic AI for audience creation, adding steps to a campaign or a journey, like being able to predict what that's gonna do. As Manny was saying, right, a lot of like predicting your next best action insights. So I think that is a bit maybe newer compared to the content area, but it's really where I think the acceleration will happen because it's where a lot of the interest is.
Well, I mean, especially if many brands are planning in the next year, we're going to see a lot of shifting, I think.
Yeah.
For Manny, how did you establish credibility within the organization and demonstrate the value of making data-driven decisions?
I bought everyone margaritas.
Oh, there you go.
No. I think so. Data is not always unicorns and fairies, right? And when it's supporting a particular narrative, I think everyone embraces it. When you start to show that it's not as always unicorns and fairies, then there's some resistance. So there's the thing that I like to say, create a bridge opportunity. So we really went around pretty much every single team to unpack how they functioned that time and then without any particular change. So you go to a creative team and you say, hey, walk me through your top process from thinking to shelf, right? How does that work? Go to a planner team and do the same. And what we started to then isolate was opportunities to interject, to intercept, and evolve. So what that meant is, hey, during this particular processing time, you're looking to understand how consumers will react to this particular product, this particular print, this particular design. I can help with that. I can go ahead and actually go talk to consumers to see if how they're gonna react and then feed back into you. So it was less a brute force approach, and it was more how do I show that I can augment, solidify, and help you with your decision-making process? evolve it a little bit and give you more certainty moving forward. It was I want to say, nearly 3 years approach. I think our first approach was to make sure everyone was speaking the same language so that the KPIs, the data, the solid foundation that we need was essentially, when you say A, it's the meaning of A is the same across pretty much every company globally, every group globally. And then moving from, okay, now we've landed on, yes, now we're all speaking the same language. Now let's start creating touch points of interception and involvement where I can feed you information that's going to make you stronger with your decisions, with your arguments, or not. Or let's use that as an opportunity to go ahead and shift. So I would say, 2.5 years, 3 years later, we have done significant progress in creating that solidification of the data and the foundation that we need. And now data is an ally rather than an enemy, because it can be seen as an enemy, right? That's the reality. But as long as you're trying to show how you can evolve and the impact that it causes when you do participate in those decision making, soon your life becomes overloaded with good meetings. Invited to all of them, and then the opposite issue happens. How do you attend all of those meetings? Should essentially give love analytics speaking for everybody. Thanks for the question.
Of course. And unfortunately, we only have time for one last question, but we'll have it for both of you, for Manny and then Marta. In true omnichannel engagement, what role does identity or connected media play?
I think is the role of understanding what the next move looks like, and then creating that painless experience throughout. It's bringing the authentic, it's bringing the brand message, it's carrying essentially the brand purpose throughout all the channel touch points, throughout, regardless if I'm online or offline or on the fly. I want to feel the same message that the consumer who's online is receiving offline. I want to feel the same love. I want to feel the same connection. So when your media is essentially talking that way to the customer, engaging that way to the customer, you go back to purpose, you go back to meaning. And in the era of AI, where robots, right, are taking more control of a couple of things, accelerating a couple of things, that connection with the brand would be really important. That's where media comes to play, creating that connection with the customer, regardless of where they are and whenever they are. So meet them where they are, understand the next touch point, and make some magic happen.
Makes sense. Marta?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think it's also when, to me, the channel, the media, the touch point becomes transparent to a certain way. Like I don't even see it. I don't even notice where I'm interacting with the brand, because what I'm focused on is the interaction, and it feels relevant to me and it feels native to the channel, right? So I think that to me is very important. Like omni-channel doesn't necessarily mean the same everywhere, because customers use channels in different ways for different reasons. And even when I think about media, right, they in the moment where media is surfaced to them are interacting with it differently. But so it's not about everything being the same, but it's about everything being connected in service of the brand and in service of the customer.
I mean, well said, and I'm really glad that we got to connect here today. Thank you again, Marta, Manny, for the great discussion, and also getting around to answering all the questions. We appreciate it. Before we wrap up, let me take a moment to tell you about eMarketer's media channels. Mark your calendar for eMarketer's next virtual summit. Join us next Friday, November 14th, for CTV and streaming advertising trends for 2026. Can't believe 2026. Secure your spot, register for more webinars like this one, and subscribe to our newsletters, all at emarketer.com. And don't forget to tune in to eMarketer's podcasts. Catch Behind the Numbers, Reimagining Retail, and the Banking and Payment Show on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you all for your time, and thanks again to Marta, Manny, the team at Adobe, and our eMarketer studio team behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We'll see you all next time on Tech Talk.